The mirror, I'm doing my dance. You packing out nobody's pants.
Hello, my name is JoJo. Welcome back to the JoJo Rogan podcast. On today's episode of JoJo Rogan, we'll be discussing different generations, starting from the silent generation, ending at Gen Z.
This is Gretchen. We asked several people different questions about the generation they grew up in.
Each individual's answers did differ based on which generation they grew up in. Today, you guys will be hearing the questions that we asked and their answers.
First question, what is your earliest memory of a political or national event? This is Joe Springer, part of the silent generation.
My earliest memory would be 1952 presidential election of Dwight Eisenhower. And it was the first time they carried it on television. I remember sitting cross-legged on the floor and not understanding all of it, but I understood what they were trying to do.
Next is Kelly Elliott. She is the baby boomers.
My first real memory may be the moon landing.
This is Miss Tamika Phillips, part of Generation X.
My earliest memory would be when Reagan and Bush were running off in a primary. When I was younger, elementary, Reagan was my first president. I just remember we did something in elementary school, like a mock vote.
Next is Taylor Wynn. She is a millennial.
Probably 9/11.
This is Mary Catherine Springer, part of Gen Z.
I feel like maybe just Obama.
Election of Obama?
Yeah, his presidency, I guess.
What major events have impacted your core values and political beliefs, and why?
I suppose it was family upbringing standards, my parents' understanding. I did have differences. Some were Democrats, some were Republicans, but significantly what impacted so many of us in that era was the Vietnam War, the 60s and 70s. The nation was really divided, but that we came together in the 70s and healed all the wounds. But at the same time, you had racial imbalance and the rise of segregation or the defeat of segregation. So it's a very tumultuous time.
Okay, I think about Watergate, and even as a kid, I knew there was so much corruption. It let me know that there was a lot of corruption in Washington, and also the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. I think those two things let me know that it wasn't the world was not this idyllic place. It's influenced me to be more aware of needing to be informed on my own and doing my own research to find truth.
I'll start with the election of President Barack Obama will probably be when I really got involved in politics. So while I was pretty, savvy in terms of what was going on in the world around me, my belief system pretty much came from how I was raised. I was raised as a Democrat and whatever. And then I learned through my sorority just kind of being more involved into what the platforms were and who I was voting for. So whereas I used to vote straight Democrat, now I really do pay attention to who's running, what their beliefs are, and then how they align with my own. And then, of course, in this moment, definitely the overturning of Roe v. Wade is something that is in the forefront, and it's where my activism lies right now. And that's where I'm a lot more involved, in addition to, of course, anything civil rights related. So.
Probably the Trump presidency, because I think it brought on kind of extremist views on both sides of politics. I think it brought on extremist views on either side of politics. So I think it kind of reevaluated me and where I sit.
I mean, kind of political, like COVID and that, election year.
Our third question is, do or did you share the same political beliefs as your family?
Generally.
Yes.
Yes.
I used to.
Yes, I do.
What or who has had the biggest influence on your political beliefs?
Certainly it was Eisenhower, what he did through the 50s and up until 60. And then, of course, Kennedy. And of course, we lived through the assassinations. But he was a Democrat. I didn't vote for him. But my point is, Eisenhower and Kennedy were very impactful. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat, but they were united in the things they did for the country.
Probably Ronald Reagan. I'm probably the only person that said that.
Comes my race and culture. I think because of how I navigate this world as a Black woman and with Black children, I connect, or my beliefs in my platform and how I move or vote really is impacted by who has our best interests at heart. And that means, like, if you are for change and social change in a positive way, then those things tend to impact me.
I hate to say it, but probably the media, just because we see a lot of stuff constantly. Even if you don't necessarily believe in it, I still think just like seeing it and just having it like on your feed and on your social media, like whether you want to believe it impacts you or not, I think subconsciously it probably does.
My parents.
Your parents?
Yes.
We'll ask our participants, if you could grow up in another generation, would you?
I would grow up in the generation that I grew up in, because if I grew up in an earlier generation, it was composite, one way of thinking, and an awakening of this country in the 60s and the 70s and the evolution. No, I grew up with enough of a conservative position, and then was able to think for myself and seeing alternate ways politically to think.
I don't. We just had so much freedom. We had freedom as kids. Even though the world was not an idyllic place, my growing up in my neighborhood with my friends was idyllic.
Yeah, sometimes. Because I feel like things used to be simpler before I was born without the internet and social media.
No, I like my generation.
What was your biggest deprivation or tragedy that happened in your generation? Joe stated that he thought the assassinations were one of the biggest deprivations of his generation. Miss Elliott said that the 9/11 attacks were one of the biggest deprivations of her generation. This would be the same for Miss Phillips. For the millennials and Generation Z, it was COVID-19.
Thank you so much for tuning in on the JoJo Rogan podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to come back next week where we will be talking about the BBL epidemic.